Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Prophecy Update. As always, it's our desire to bring the events that are happening in the world from a biblical perspective and also a prophetic perspective. So thanks for joining us this week. What we want to talk about is Orwell's fictional story of 1984 has become reality, and the ministry of truth for America has arrived. And it will be arriving for many other countries around the world. But what has happened is Joe Biden has established through the Department of Homeland Security a Disinformation Governance Board. Again, akin to George Orwell's Ministry of Truth in that fictional novel that he wrote in 1984. The only thing George Orwell got wrong was the date. He put it at 1984. It's now 2022, and it's happening right here in America, which threatens all of us for our ability to have free speech, as a U.S. citizen, but also threatens what we say as Christians, because that's the real target, is to silence Christianity, to silence the Bible, and all of us who speak the truth in love. So we're going to discuss the implications for us all and what that means for us as believers and as citizens who cherish the principle of free speech. Remember, free speech comes from the Bible. It derives from the Bible. And remember this, free speech is always tied to freedom of religion. So if you can't have free speech, then you won't be able to have freedom of religion, because Christianity is a public faith. It is one which we carry out the Great Commission, and one in which we can only do by speaking. How will they hear if no one is sent to them to preach to them, to tell them the truth, is the idea that Paul had. You have to have the freedom to speak in order to share Christianity and spread Christianity and disciple and all that. So this Orwellian ministry of truth that Joe Biden has established seeks to threaten how we practice our Christianity. And again, this violates the First Amendment in the United States Constitution with the free exercise of religion and with free speech. So we'll talk about this. So it's probable that they've been thinking about this for a while, ever since, Donald Trump's presidency, about how to do something like this. But it came in response or on the heels of Elon Musk buying Twitter. And obviously Elon Musk wanting to allow freedom of speech on Twitter. And again, remember, Twitter has been nothing but a leftist propaganda. That's all Twitter has been. And now these leftists, these countries like China and different rogue countries that use Twitter to get out their propaganda, has now been disarmed. And the powers that be are not going to allow this to go unnoticed, and this is where, watch what they do. They're going to create a war on Elon Musk because of him taking away this vital tool that the left have used for propaganda. So anyway, as they see it, Musk represents a major threat because they want to silence the opposition. They have been silencing the opposition by their lies, their false narratives, and then suppressing the truth, right? Because these Babylonians, these ungodly people of this world that are trying to rule the world, they cannot allow other opinions that run up against their false narrative and that don't line up with that narrative. Or they don't want to hear facts. They don't want to hear evidence that contradict their crazy ideas and their ungodly ideas. And so they have used Twitter for that reason, and most of the major social network platforms. But now that at least Twitter has been threatened. And again, we're not saying Elon Musk is on our side. He's an atheist. But if he's for free speech, then that's great. That helps us out for the remaining time that we have here. So we're happy for that, at least in that fact. But here's what's happened. The left has been planning this for a long time, and they had to figure out a way to stop free speech in America without taking away the First Amendment. So what they have done is they've went around the First Amendment, and basically what they have done is weaponize the Department of Homeland Security and calling truth evidence and facts that goes against the Babylonian narrative, that goes against the leftist narrative, as hate speech or disinformation. Those are the two terms they're using now, hate speech and disinformation, to silence differing opinions. Now, they're going to say they're for free speech. We're just against hate speech and disinformation. Well, right there, who gets to decide what is hate speech and who gets to decide what is disinformation? Here's the bottom line about free speech. Free speech must allow lies. It must allow narratives that you and I would disagree with. That's the nature of free speech. And the way to combat lies and false propaganda and truly disinformation is more information, more people speaking into the public arena as far as free speech. You don't limit free speech, you give more of it. And that amount of right information will squelch the disinformation and the false information. And again, they're not working on that principle. They're working on the fact that they are lying. They have a false narrative that they want to get pushed through. And so the truth for them becomes disinformation. Facts and evidence become disinformation. And the Bible's edicts and laws and principles and all that comes from the Bible is considered hate speech. Because you know what the Bible speaks against as far as their narrative. The Bible speaks against the transgender movement. The Bible speaks against the LGBT movement. The Bible speaks against going global. The Bible speaks against socialism, communism, Marxism. And so they don't like that. And so they've got to label the Bible hate speech, right? And anything else disinformation. Anyway, this governance board, this ministry of truth, so to speak, is going to be used against us with our tax dollars. And the government of the United States has about 240 employees that can do their bidding. So this is a massive thing. This is not, 5 people in an office trying to run this. The government has access to 240,000 employees that it can bring into this to regulate speech. So this is a big deal. Anyway, according to Senator Ron Johnson, he said this is obviously an Orwellian nightmare come true. And he's right. It is an Orwellian nightmare. And we would like it to stay fiction, but unfortunately, here we are. And see, this is how every regime has to do. If they're going to be a totalitarian, authoritarian regime, you can't allow free speech. You can't allow the Second Amendment and people having the rights to bear arms. You can't allow freedom of religion, whether it's in China or Venezuela or Cuba or Russia or wherever you're talking, a Muslim country. You can't allow those things. Basic freedoms that come from God cannot be allowed in an authoritarian regime. And so it is an Orwellian nightmare. If you recall, if you're not familiar with 1984, written by Orwell, you need to read it. It's very good. It's excellent. It'll tell you a lot of how they are working today in our government. Anyway, in 1984, Orwell described the propaganda arm of the regime called the party. So the regime was called the party. We call them today the leftists, the Babylonians, the ungodly, right? And it was called in Orwell's book, the Ministry of Truth. Well, it wasn't the ministry of truth per se. It was the ministry of false narratives, right? But they lied and they maintained these false narratives. And so it's just like when you heard public officials like in New Zealand and Australia saying, if you want the right information, come to the government. That's crazy. And for people to believe that the government, any government on this planet, is going to be truthful with them, you've got to be out of your mind. Do not trust the government. They are not to be trusted. You trust God. You trust Jesus. You trust the Bible. Don't trust the government. But that's how they're telling people, trust us. We'll tell you what's right and wrong. And that's what this ministry of truth is about, that people will look to the government to tell them what to do and what is the truth. That's scary because now they turn government into a god. And that's what a lot of people here in America are turning to, especially a younger generation, are turning to the government for the answers. And because they've been so conditioned by public school and the colleges and universities, they've been told, brainwashed to think the government's always right. The government will take care of you. They're always looking out for your best interest, which is a complete lie. But so many people believe it, that's why they believe whatever the government tells them. Anyway, the Ministry of Truth in 1984 the purpose of it was to squash freedom of speech and to falsify history like they're doing now. They falsify American history, don't they? They're rewriting it. And these younger generations are getting the curriculum that has been rewritten as far as American history, and it demonizes America, right? That's why they come out hating America, because they've been programmed like that. And then they go to the college and universities, and again, more propaganda is given to hatred of country, to be a global citizen, to not want national sovereignty, and to accept every value and principle that the whore of Babylon gives out, which is antithetical to the Bible, obviously. So anyway, that's what the Ministry of Truth did in the book, and that's what's happening now. And so, like the party in the book is the regime, okay? And it would present propaganda lies like this to people: war is peace, or freedom is slavery, or ignorance is strength. And that was some of the propaganda lies in the book, right? And you can see right now how those propaganda lies are coming out, and we're having to deal with it. Like, there are no genders. Like, you can claim to be whatever gender you want, right? That's propaganda. And the more times you say it, the more people start believing it, especially if people are ignorant of the facts and evidence. And so you see this mantra that comes out of the United States government and the governments around the world, like capitalism is evil. That's one of their propaganda lines. And so the younger crowd believes it, and they don't understand that the free market system derives itself from the Bible, that is the closest thing we can get in this evil, cursed world of a somewhat fair economy, okay? But Marxism, socialism, communism is not the answer. The real answer is when Jesus rules and reigns in Jerusalem for 1,000 years and he controls the economy, then everything will be fair, holy, and righteous. So even in a system like free market, yeah, are there problems? Of course there is, but it's the best system we got in a sin-cursed world. But see, the attack on the free market system, oh, it's greedy or whatever, it's propaganda. If you want to know what true greed is, look at communism, socialism, and Marxism, because the elites are the greedy ones and they take all the money, okay? And it's not based on meritocracy, it's based on who they want to give the money to. Anyway, that's, you know the propaganda that's going out there right now in our world. So just like in 1984, we have our own, okay? And so anyway, in the book, the ministry was also responsible for the language of the party, which they called newspeak. Newspeak in the book. Now, we can bridge that over into our current events and say the way we talk now is called political correctness. The way we talk now, the newspeak is inclusivity. The newspeak is equity. You know, those types of phrases that we want to be more inclusive in our speech. We don't want to threaten people by our speech and with, you know, ideas that are contrary to the party, right? And so that's what we're having now. We have newspeak, and the newspeak is political correctness. And you just can't tell the truth anymore. Otherwise, you get demonized, cut off, shut off of a platform, you're kicked out of the group, you're kicked out of a school, or whatever, for espousing biblical beliefs against this newspeak. So anyway, it's the same thing. And in the book, the party, the regime, couldn't afford to let the truth see the light of the day. So they had to suppress the truth and force their lies to be the truth. And the truth ended up being anything they said, right? Does that sound familiar? Yeah. So if you listen to what comes out of the White House with Psaki or any of these other regimes in Europe or Australia, New Zealand, Canada, wherever, the truth is suppressed. If you notice, the truth is suppressed and forced down, and they turn their lies into the truth. And the unfortunate thing is they have the media to back them up. And so the media is the one who controls the newspeak in America and around Western society. And again, this is very dystopian. It's 1984-esque, and it is the Ministry of Truth. So remember, with the Biden administration, this is the same administration that got the FBI to come against parents who would go to school board meetings and complain about critical race theory or the LGBT or transgender agenda being taught to kindergartners and first and second, third graders, and for teachers coming out in their class at junior high and high school levels, telling people all kinds of weird sexual deviant behaviors. So when these parents complained, you remember the Biden administration sicked the FBI on them and called them domestic terrorists for freely speaking their minds about sex education or critical race theory, which they didn't want to have. So it's already begun, okay, the silencing. They don't want parents at board meetings, at school board meetings. These boards want to do their own thing. That's why I recommend getting your kids out of public schools. The public schools are wasted. They're gone. They're destroyed. There's no coming back. And the people running them are evil. I'm sorry. Whether they know it or not, the things they're doing are evil. To push on sex education on a kindergartner about, asking him whether or not to decide whether he's a boy or not. I mean, it's crazy. That's absolutely evil. Well, anyway, this Ministry of Truth that Biden set up, called the Disinformation Governance Board, will coordinate countering misinformation related to what? Homeland Security, focused specifically on irregular migration and Russia. And again, they threw Russia in there for some reason. But anyway, when they say this, we're going to counter misinformation, what do you mean by misinformation? How do you define that? And a lot of the senators and congressmen have been asking this question, but of course they get no answer from the Biden administration. What do you mean? Oh, it's what they deem misinformation, whether it's truth, facts, or Bible, whatever, that's going to be construed as misinformation. And what do you mean by irregular migration? What does that mean? I mean, are you, if I'm spreading disinformation via my platforms, what does that mean? That I could be preaching Bible, I can be quoting the Bible, I could be using my free speech to say what I want to say against the government. Is that going to be irregular migration because I'm spreading it on a platform? Is that what they mean by that? So that I'm going to be penalized or whatever, put in jail or whatever for migrating information out? Is that what they're saying? I mean, you can read between the lines, guys, as you can see. And who's gonna decide what disinformation is? Who's gonna make that decision that what you and I are saying is hate speech or disinformation? Well, they're gonna use a board, and they've already appointed a very evil and a very ungodly Babylonian and a liar on top of that by the name of Nina Jankowicz, who says that she shudders that people like Elon Musk would be allowed free speech, would allow free speech on Twitter, So for instance, she states, I shudder to think about if free speech absolutists, that's you and me, right, who want free speech, we're called now free speech absolutists. Well, that's the nature of free speech. It has to be absolute, okay? We're taking over more platforms. What that would look like for the marginalized communities. What is she talking about? What communities are marginalized by free speech? Again, this is part of her lying, right? There's no one that's marginalized by free speech. In fact, if you don't allow free speech, then you will have communities that are marginalized, like us, the Christians, like the conservatives, right? Those people will be marginalized. So isn't it funny how the left, the Babylonians, always project on others what they themselves do? It's kind of a psychological thing that they do. Anyway, she goes on and says, which are already shouldering disproportionate amounts of this abuse. What are you talking about, lady? Again, this is out of the mouth of a liar. She has a forked tongue. This is how evil they are, saying that, oh, these communities are already shouldering abuse. They're being abused by free speech. No, they're not. There's nobody being abused by free speech. In fact, your limiting of free speech is abusing us. I am the one that gets kicked off the platforms. The conservatives get kicked off the platforms. The Christians get kicked off the platforms. You are saying that this is hurting communities. Your lack of free speech is hurting America. It's hurting the salt and light of America, the church. You're the ones causing abuse. But again, she's evil. She has a forked tongue. And she and these other ungodly people that they appointed to this board on the Department of Homeland Security hate free speech. Yeah, they hate it. Because when you have an authoritarian mindset that wants to control everybody, you can't allow free speech. And again, like I mentioned, free speech comes from the Bible, so it's a biblical trait. And so obviously you could see the satanic attack on a biblical principle like free speech, right? We are called to speak the truth in love. That's why freedom of religion, freedom of speech are so important and intertwined, because they're connected in that way. And with this Nina Jankowicz, she's not only evil, she's not only a liar, and she's been proven to be a liar. I want you to see how bizarre this woman is. Now, I'm going to show you a clip from Tucker Carlson. He had a clip of her on her show. Now, here's what you have to understand. When people have a Romans 1 mind, they're not only they go evil, but they go weird. They go bizarre. They don't think straight. They lose common sense. So here is Nina Jankowicz singing a song, and she's put the words to it that talk about disinformation. This is how crazy she is. Watch this.
Information laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. When Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain, they're laundering disinfo, and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice, or vote. Oh!
So this is the point of the show. We're going to say we're kidding, we're making all of this up. It's not really happening in the country you were born in, but it is happening. That's now a law enforcement official. It's also the person you just saw, an individual who brags about getting a master's degree from Georgetown University. In case you're wondering if the entire academic credentialing machine that sustains America's ruling class is in fact a joke. Spoiler alert, yes, it is a joke.
And like Tucker said, he's not joking. I'm not joking. This is how insane these people are. They're not in their right mind. Anyway, on her website, she calls herself an internationally recognized expert on disinformation and democratization. How did you become an expert on this, right? How did you do that? I didn't know you could become an expert. Did you get a degree? It's all made up. It's junk, right? So this evil person is going to be in charge of spotting disinformation. That's who's going to be in charge of looking at you and I on platforms and saying, hey, I deem you disinformation. She likes the fact that the media covered up the story of Hunter Biden even and his laptop. This is part of the Babylonian narrative, right? And all his deals with other foreign governments like China and Russia and Ukraine government, of course, she wanted that buried. She didn't want to talk about that. And she basically said, that's disinformation. And she said, that's propaganda. Again, that's what they try to do, is bury the truth, suppress the truth, right? And like the schools say, when you challenge them, hey, you're teaching critical race theory, they say, no, we're not. We're not doing that. Look, this woman is a shill for the globalist agenda because they don't want free speech anywhere on this globe, okay? Now, according to the Daily Caller, Jankowicz also claimed the Steele dossier, get this, which has, she said, was totally discredited, she said, and was funded by Republicans. I mean, just a flat out liar. And as the Daily Caller points out, Christopher Steele, the dossier's author, was never funded by the Republicans. Where did you get that? In fact, the Washington Post reported in October 2017 that Mark E. Elias, a lawyer for the Clinton campaign and the DNC, and his law firm, Perkins Coie, hired Fusion GPS last April to investigate Donald Trump. Something that she doesn't want to talk about. So we already know that she lies and she covers up what the left is doing. So she's just a liar. That this liar will be in charge of determining whether you and I are getting disinformation out, right? You can almost predict what she's going to do. Now think about this. If we were in Jesus' day, and Jesus was spreading the gospel like he was during his ministry, spreading the truth, right? The headline from the caption would read, "Local carpenter continues to spread disinformation, deemed harmful from religious authorities." And I got that headline from the Babylon Bee, which is a satire, but it's great. And they're exactly right. They would deem Jesus that he was spreading disinformation. That's exactly what the Pharisees and the Sadducees and religious leaders of that day said, right? And they handed him over to Pilate because of that. That's the same thing they would do to him today in our world. Nothing's really changed. And so we're in good company. Like our master said, no servant is above his master. If they did it to me, they're going to do it to you. And so get ready for them to do it to you and I. And think about all the examples of shutting down free speech over the last couple of years, right? You had soldiers penalized for having faith-based sticker at his desk. You had real estate agents in Virginia forced out of business because they insisted on including scripture verses on their business webpage. You had a Muslim convert to Christianity who was asked at the Mall of America about his beliefs and then started to share his testimony. And then here comes a Muslim woman who overheard a private conversation, reported it to the mall security, and this guy found himself in jail for it. Yeah, get that. Or how about the pastors who speak out against traditional marriage, having public officials seek to seize their sermons and terminate their tax-free status? What about that? How about all the pastors who realized that Charlie Oscar Victor India Delta 19er was a plandemic, and they refused to shut down their churches, and God bless them for keeping those doors open, and also warned about the experimental piercing that caused all the deadly reactions, right? They all got fined, right? They were taken off their platforms. And folks, it's only going to get worse. The LGBT mafia against those homophobes like us, the trans mafia against the transphobes like us, the critical race theory who calls us racists, who call you and I climate deniers, right? Anti-science. They're going to call us who want borders and national sovereignty. They're going to call us Nazi nationalists who resist the New World Order. Or they're going to just simply call us conspiracy theorists when we talk about, hey, they're introducing a digital currency that's going to lead to the tribulation. And one day in the tribulation, the Antichrist is going to use this digital currency to be the mark of the beast in the future. Or the fascists and the Marxists and the communists are going to call us greedy capitalists who believe, obviously, in the free market system and say we're evil and we're just nothing but greedy and we want inequality and we don't want equity, all that junk. And we don't want equity, by the way, and that we're not inclusive enough. Again, be prepared because it's already started. The ungodly Babylonians want power. They do not possess any right or wrong. They have no morals, guys. They have no anchors to morality. They only understand one thing, power. And anything that threatens that is suppressed. So the truth threatens their power. So it must be suppressed. So lying becomes their native language like their master, Satan. and they suppress the truth in their actions. That's what they have to do. That's what Satan has to do, right? That's what Romans 1 people, that's happened in their mind, that's what they have to do. So please understand, truth is not a virtue for the Babylonians. They don't even think it's a value system. They don't think it's worth anything. Lying to them is of value because the ends, which is the power they want, justifies the means. Anything they have to do, if they have to lie, steal, cheat, kill, murder, whatever it might be, to get to their ends of power, they'll use any means. And lying is a big one in suppressing the truth. So language must be controlled. It must be stifled and minimized. That's their mentality. Free speech wants many opinions out there. The key to destroying a lie is more truth, more voices speaking the truth. More information destroys lies. This is why Orwell described how the Ministry of Truth in 1984 with its newspeak altered language to minimize the language because the party's intention was that the language becomes so minimal, so reduced, because of political correction or whatever, that no one is capable of thinking anything other than what the party wants them to think. This would mean that betraying the party in control, the Biden regime or the New World Order or whatever, that you would be betraying the party if you thought differently, if you spoke differently. And having independent thoughts will be impossible one day. That's the idea. But let's look to the scripture and see what the scripture says about this. Proverbs 12:6 says this, "The words of the wicked are, lie in wait for blood, but the mouth of the upright will deliver them." So here's the encouraging thing. They're lying in wait for our blood. They want to silence us. They want to shut us down. But scripture says, the mouth of the upright will deliver them. Keep speaking the truth in love and it will deliver you, okay? So we have to keep doing it. We cannot be intimidated by what they're about to do. We have to keep speaking. Even one of the United States founders, George Washington, said this, "If freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent, we may be led like sheep to the slaughter." That's right. We can't allow this. Benjamin Franklin said this, "Whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech." Freedom of speech is a principal pillar of a free government. When this support is taken away, the constitution of the free society is dissolved and tyranny erected on its ruins. Couldn't have said it better. He's absolutely right. You take away free speech, you will destroy a society and it will erect into a tyranny. Absolutely. And again, you got to know the real intention. The real intention is not just to silence conservative, it's to silence the Bible. Conservatism derives many of its core beliefs from the Bible, even though some conservatives are not even believers. But conservatism comes, a lot of their principles comes from the Bible. You and I are biblical Christians, and of course everything we align with is what the Bible says. And therefore, the real target, you must understand, because this is a spiritual warfare, the real target is Christianity. The real target is the Bible. The real target is Jesus. The real target is obviously God himself. And so, you have to silence the revelation that comes from God, the truth that comes from God. And again, we cannot shudder at them trying to darken this world. We have to continue to shine our light. The idea of light means revelation. We have to give the truth out to this world because the time is short. We cannot cower in fear. Let them do whatever they want to do it. But here's the thing, God will preserve us. If we are the ones getting out the truth, who else is going to do it? The Lord is using us in these last days. So don't cower in fear. Be even more emboldened to say, as long as I stay obedient and I keep getting the word of God out and I keep telling the truth, God will somehow sustain that and allow that truth to get out. We don't have to be afraid. People who are afraid self-edit. People who are afraid commit the sin of silence. But if you're not afraid and you understand what you've been called to do, you can be bold and say, So what? Bring it on. Bring on the ministry of truth, because they will not be able to silence you. That is a promise from God, because you and I are the only ones getting out that truth. And like it says in spiritual warfare, resist the devil and he will flee. So we have to resist this. God's going to make a path for us to be able to continue to get the truth out. We have to adjust, we have to adapt, but he's going to make a way out. He's not going to allow them to extinguish what you and I are saying. So we just got to take our stand. We have to adapt to the environment, and God's going to make this way for us, just like he did with Israel in parting of the Red Sea, just like he did with Daniel in the lion's den, just like he did with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He delivers them, especially those who are obedient and getting the word out. That's what you and I have to do. Because there's truth seekers out there. There's truth seekers as far as unbelievers, and there's truth seekers as far as Laodicean, carnal, worldly believers that have woken up, not the woke kind, but have really said, what's going on here? We have unbelievers and believers alike that have awakened to see something's going on here, and you and I are the ones to give them that truth. Because, so since there's truth seekers out, a voice is needed. And God is not going to allow Joe Biden, or anyone else for that matter, to silence us. Truth will find a way through it all, and God will make sure that happens. And so again, this is how we fulfill the Great Commission. We're on mission. God's going to make sure we do that we're allowed to speak somehow, some way. So with all that being said, don't be afraid. You have nothing to fear. If you're obedient and getting that truth out, God is going to preserve you. Because the truth seekers out there, some that need to be saved, some that need to be awakened to the spiritual stupor that they're in, they need you. They need you and I. And so as long as we stay the course, as long as we keep doing the Great Commission, as long as we get that truth out in love, somehow, some way, God will make a way for that truth to get out. God will never be without a witness. Never. And the truth will be able to go out and warn these people until we're raptured, until we're taken home. So don't be afraid. Understand what they're doing. That's one thing. Don't bury your head in the sand. Understand what they're doing, but keep firing away. Keep pitching that ball. Keep throwing strikes. Just keep at it. And God will ensure that nothing will be able to stop you, okay? A couple things before we go. Make sure that you have your accounts with Rumble, BitChute, and YouTube as you watch us. Make sure you're on our text alert system as well. We want to make sure as many people in our system can be in our text alert so that we can text alert you when things change or something happened. And so follow the link, and you can put in your information, and you'll be signed up with that. And then also be in prayer for us. We get a lot of hits spiritually, and we get a lot of crazies that watch our program that are not stable, and so be praying for our protection. And also, if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us financially, we could use all the help we can get. Not only help with keeping the online ministry going, which requires a lot of people, a lot of time, a lot of effort, but also our general ministry and the fact that we're building a building to finally have a place to settle. We have been in Exodus, wandering the desert for about the last 12 years, and setting up, tearing down in schools and all that. And so we've really never had a place of permanency. So if you want to help us out with our building, that would be tremendous. We're looking for the fall to have that built and ready to go, which will be a blessing to finally have a permanent spot. So again, if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us, great. If he doesn't, don't worry about it. But we do covet your prayers. We need them, okay? And remember what Jesus said. When you see these things begin to happen, like squashing the truth, suppressing the truth, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. God bless you. We'll see you next time.